Battlefield 6's open beta ended 2 months ago, and with the full launch happening this week, it's time to jump into some of the juicy content planned for this great return to form for the series. A new community update has given us all the details of the day one patch that's coming to the game, making sweeping changes that'll improve the game after the findings of the open beta back in August. Now, if this is your first time on my channel, the way I do things is by upfronting the knowledge in my videos. So with that being said, let me just give you the down and dirty of what's happening. They've tweaked some weapons, but mainly found that the time to kill, or TTK, to be pretty balanced across most guns. The shotgun now needs more pellets to kill, which means that it still does the same amount of damage, but you need all the pellets to hit to do that damage, so basically you need to be closer. On that same note, recoil has been rebalanced for automatic weapons, giving tap firing and burst control a higher appeal than spraying and praying. How that actually turns out, we'll have to see, because the damage curve right now is static for all guns as far as a damage number goes. But this is a great improvement to help diversity across weapons. Movement has also had a big change to help reduce the Call of Duty habit of jumping and going prone or moving laterally while jumping. Jumping and then shooting has had its accuracy reduced, and repeat jumping will slow your character down. But movement as a whole now feels more responsive with better pacing to keep it fast, but less twitchy like it was in beta. On the point of maps, we have two big callouts. First, it seems like the open playlists where guns are not restricted by your class choice was the most popular option. Now, we aren't sure what that margin looks like. It could have been a 51% of people chose open, while 49% chose closed, as EA seemed very keen to go with open over closed before that beta even started. The results here are just pretty vague from this update and what this ultimately means. They said that they will be providing a lot of set open playlists, but also closed playlists as well. What I think this means is that closed will have static playlists, while open will continue to have dynamic ones as the game ages, but not sure really. Second, rush and breakthrough game modes have been reworked to make it so that there's less imbalance between attackers and defenders. This should lead to less first point wins or other boring gameplay settings where you just get dunked on nonstop. All in all, they've made a ton of awesome changes that were requested by the community. In this video, I'm going to go through more of the nuanced ones like, engineers now start with the MBT law rather than the RPG for their missile launcher. Also, we'll be discussing the roadmap as well as the low points of this update from my opinion as a Battlefield veteran. I'll put the link to all 3 community posts that I'm using in this video in the description below. If you don't want to listen to me ramble, I'm pretty much just going to be reading those posts and talking about them. But that's too long to watch this entire video. So if that's all you wanted to know, please feel free to shut the video down. I want to be respectful of your time. You can navigate ahead to any part of the video that interests you the most using the chapters with the timeline in the description. And lastly, don't forget to check me out on Twitch, where we will be doing a giveaway of the game at launch, all launch weekend. You can find a link in the description below. But let's get started on the launch update and changes coming to Battlefield 6. So to get us started, let's talk about weapons and movement, because it's kind of the two biggest things that you're going to interact with the most in Battlefield 6. So DICE has already said that they've taken measures to, absorb a lot of the open beta results from August. And they made a community post at the end of August, pretty much saying that the shotgun would be nerfed and that they would be dealing with the recoil of a lot of different weapons. Now, what does that really mean? So the shotgun, for example, it was saying that more pellets are going to be required to kill things. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the shotgun's damage has been scaled down. Let's use some blanket numbers here. Let's assume that the shotgun shoots 10 pellets and does 100 damage, thus instantly killing you. What they're saying is in the open beta that you could have less pellets hit and it would actually kill you, 9 times out of 10, versus now you need more of those pellets to hit to actually get a full-on kill shot. So that is a huge improvement, because the shotgun was a little crazy. You could just pretty much one-shot people from 14 meters. Now, another thing they did was the weapon rebalancing for recoil. Right now, or at least if you played from the open beta, you're familiar with the way that the weapon recoil was pretty much a little not balanced, in the sense that you could use an SMG or an LMG, and if you were close range, the SMG would always win because fire rate became king even at longer ranges. So what they did was they did a rebalance here to make it really favor burst firing or tap firing, so that if you are using any kind of LMG, assault rifle, any kind of DMR, you do have that advantage at range. But when you are up close and personal, the recoil pattern of an SMG doesn't matter because you can just spray up someone's body. So hopefully this gives us a sense of balance for those weapons so that people aren't just pretty much using the highest rate of fire weapons. That is something that's a little bit more akin to a Call of Duty. Now, another issue, though, that they didn't even talk about, so we're going to have to see how this recoil comes into the actual game, is that all the guns have the same damage curve at certain meters, meaning that every gun, whether it's an SMG, a pistol, a sniper rifle, an assault rifle, whatever, will all have the same percentage, well, not the same actual percentage, but they will have percentage damage drop off at the same intervals. So it's something like 14 meters, every single weapon has something from like a 22% to a 15% damage drop off, depending on the weapon. So we're going to have to see how these recoils actually affect how the weapons play. So that's another big thing that's coming with the actual launch on day one. Now, with that, though, since I mentioned Call of Duty, we have the movement patterns of Battlefield 6. A lot of people were saying that Battlefield 6 is a little too frantic right now. It does play a little bit too much like a Call of Duty, where you're doing jump fires, you're bunny hopping around a corner, you're jumping, going prone, headshotting someone. So what they've done is they've tried to rein that in a little bit. You're going to have an accuracy penalty every time you try to jump and then do a shot, or you're trying to jump and go prone, jump around corners, trying to move laterally, stuff like that. Any kind of repeat jumping will eventually kind of reduce the amount you jump and the speed at which you jump. But they've also, conversely, made it so that movement is a little bit tighter, so that you can actually have a little bit more responsiveness. So yeah, maybe you're not going to be jumping everywhere, but you should feel a little bit more in control of your character. And they've slowed the pace down so that it feels less frantic and a little bit more grounded like Battlefield typically is. So these are some of the bigger things that are coming. There's other stuff that's also happening, like we talked about in the intro, so with some weapon balancing along the lines for Engineer. Like Engineer no longer will start with the RPG, they will start with the Law. So they'll have a lock-on capability right out the gate. One big gadget change I'm not too crazy about, though, is to make it so that spawn beacons can only be utilized once per squad mate. Maybe you, instead of this, maybe put them on a timer, like, hey, they're only active for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or something like that, because I feel like you can get this beacon spawn camped and then you lose access to it pretty quickly. If it's on a timer, then hey, yeah, maybe you can't back cap something because you dropped a spawn beacon way out of the way, and you get the ability to spawn over here, and that's really causing a lot of map disruption. Those things are kind of the way Battlefield has always been, right? Getting that recon back there, getting access to that spawn beacon. But I think limiting the amount of the spawn beacons, or the times you can spawn on the beacon, is less effective than just simply putting a timer on it. Now, we also are going to be seeing some different tweaks to other kits, but they haven't really given us enough information on that. The full patch notes should be coming today or tomorrow, with the game coming out on Friday. Also some other tweaks here and there, but I'm really excited to see what those full patch notes look like for weapons and movement. But let's jump into another big point of contention, or at least a big discussion point, in how the maps and playlists are going to work. Now, we've all played all the maps in the beta. We played them till our fingers bled. And as we come into the launch of the game, a lot of people were hoping for larger maps. And what DICE was saying is that the sample size of maps that we played with was on the smaller spectrum, which is pretty awesome, because some of them were like larger maps than I would have thought. And we're going to have a lot more maps that are way bigger, that do utilize vehicles at a larger range, a lot of more fun things. And on that note too, when it comes to vehicles, they've taken a look at, perhaps, they said they didn't give us any conclusive evidence here, but talking about more of possible naval interactions, warfare type of stuff, and the Little Bird helicopter making it into the game, which I already thought it was. So maybe I'm stupid in what they're talking about, but go ahead and let me know in the comment section below. I'm looking at the actual update here, and for the naval portion, they said, separately, requests for naval warfare have not gone unnoticed, nor have the calls for a certain fan favorite little helicopter, platoons, and more. So those are some of the things that they've talked about that they are listening. And what's really nice about this, like kind of like day one update, is a lot of it is response to the community's feedback post beta, in addition to some other lab tests that happen. Lab tests are basically their little like closed testing circle that they've used. So they've done a lot of testing along the lines of like, hey, are weapon archetypes being used more than others? And they've said that outright, No, they're all pretty much balanced, which brings me to my next portion here about playlists within this section. So we know we're getting more maps, but we know now that they've said, hey, we talked about with the beta doing closed playlists and open playlists. What does that mean? An open playlist is basically you can choose a class and you have unrestricted access to any weapon in the game. The typical kind of classic Battlefield experience is you have a class and you have restricted access to only the guns that that class can use. That is a closed playlist. So coming into the beta, they were saying, we think you guys are going to like open. We want to do open, but we'll do a closed playlist for y'all. And what really happened was, as a result of the beta, they said, well, the evidence was conclusive enough. We're going to go with open. They didn't really give us a sense of what that margin looked like, though. Was it 51% of players liked the open playlist and 49% liked close? I feel like the biggest thing we're going to see as the game comes into a launch, rather than just an open beta or closed testing circles, I don't know, you can tell me if you feel this and it's not just anecdotal experience. I feel like anytime you do an early access, an open beta, a closed beta, anything like that, it's a much different, more tight-knit community that is really prone to lots of feedback and, I don't know, experimenting with a lot of different things. Once you get into a full-fledged launch, you now have millions of people playing, especially a game like a Battlefield or a Call of Duty or a FIFA or any of like the major mainstream video games from major developers. You get such a massive playlist, player number, that it ultimately results in homogenous gameplay, meaning that people will pretty much watch a TikTok, read a Kotaku article, watch a content fucking creator, and end up pretty much distilling their gameplay down to like 5 or 6 variations. It kind of just happens with every single game. People always seek out a meta. So open and closed playlists, I think, are going to be very interesting because I think it might actually really skew the way that balancing works. They said from all their testing that there was no one weapon archetype that, here, I'll give you the actual quote. There was not a single dominant weapon archetype, and we observed a consistent and well-distributed pick rate between them. So I think it's really easy to look at that in a vacuum of testers that are usually playing a lot of different things, trying a lot of different stuff. But what's probably going to happen is those dominant weapon archetypes are going to pop up as you come into a full launch status, with a lot of people going, oh, don't play with SMGs. They're all garbage right now. Everyone just play with a assault rifle or something like that. So the argument is that they've said, hey, we're going with an open playlist and we're going to focus more on open playlists going forward, but we will also provide the people that do want to play closed playlists with closed playlists, which is a really weird statement. I think what they're trying to say with that is that closed weapon playlists will be static. And open weapon playlists will be constantly evolving as they add more maps, more modes, more weapons, all sorts of stuff to the game. So at the same time, we recognize that some players prefer the closed weapons experience. To support them, official closed weapon playlists will be available at launch. Additionally, closed weapons mutators will remain part of the Portal tool set so players can create and share their own custom experiences, which is, I guess, the last note in this section here is about you can custom create your own type of server with its own rule set, more or less, call them mutators in the Portal, or is now called Community toolset. And you can do also a server browser. So you don't need to necessarily be locked into specific things here for these playlists. You can start playing them in different ways. You can start experiencing them in different ways. And I think that's a nice thing, right? We can play with a breakthrough with like 128 players, which is something that they've kind of tried to, break away from. Also, too, on that note, they have talked about balancing both rush and breakthrough, which is huge, because what was happening with a lot of rush maps are that people were winning on that first point. You wouldn't be able to push past that first point, and then the defenders would just win, and it would just not be as fun. Or attackers were stacked on certain maps, and they would just simply steamroll all the way through. So they've gone ahead and done a rebalance on a lot of the rush maps, taking a look at what we've already played and distributing things accordingly. Same thing with breakthrough, to try to make it so that it is less of a stalemate, more of an actual evolving map process. They've also looked at the player count on both those map styles to lock in a specific one that plays a little bit better than, the larger ones that just really kind of drone on, right? When you have like 128 versus 128, it just doesn't really have as cool of a feel as you think it does on paper. And that's what they've said too, coming even into the open beta. They were like, we really thought 128 versus 128 would be really good, but even we were like, this was maybe a little too ambitious. It's not necessarily as fun as we thought it was. So both of those game modes have gotten a pass to make them a lot more fine-tuned. So now that we've talked about a lot of the balancing and how the playlists are going to work out, and also how the weapons are doing, let's talk about what the future of Battlefield 6 looks like after launch. So the first season of Battlefield 6, as DICE has put it, is broken into 3 months: October 28th, November 18th, and December 9th. Those are our 3 pivotal months. And basically with every single one of those months, we're going to get a new map. And then with 2 of the 3, the first 2, we're going to get a new mode, Strike Point, and then Sabotage, which are more of a team-focused playthrough. Strike Point, I believe, is a 4 versus 4 map style. As I look down into the notes right now, it's 4v4. And then the other the other mode style that's coming in November is a little bit larger at 8v8. So you can see they're trying to kind of keep it smaller for these 2 map modes. But what we'll be also getting are a number of pickups for the November series, but a lot of different weapons. So we're getting a new carbine in October, a new sidearm, and a new sniper rifle, all in October. And in November, we'll be getting a new shotgun as well as another new sidearm. So a lot of fun things that are planned in the early stages, which is nice. You know, when it comes to like that dreaded fucking word, live service, you're like, oh man, I hope this is actually going to work. And I think what makes a live service game work is, what is your post-launch rollout really look like? And does it have enough engagement early in its post-launch to keep me involved? I'm going to give you an example here. If I look at Dune Awakening, which I love, I mean, I've covered on the channel, great game, love the hell out of it. But the first real content for it just came out like last month, and that game was like a June launch or something like that. And it came out at the kind of tail end of September, very beginning of October, around then. That's a pretty sizable amount of time for a really single player narrative game with a light bit of PvP multiplayer experience. With Battlefield 6, you do have the advantage of it being a multiplayer game, so people are going to be playing that quite a bit, and you can rehash the same maps because it's kind of the expected gameplay loop. So it's nice to see that 18 days after launch, we're already going to get more content. And then really, like about 30 more days after that, we're getting another wave of content. And then we have a whole event that happens December 9th, which I'm sure will just have a bunch of cosmetics locked to it. And what other things are going to add to that, we don't really know. It just always says and more on these things. And then we have a whole bunch of stuff that's going to happen in Q1 that they have not divulged, but hopefully a bunch of new maps, a bunch of new modes. And they've also talked quite a bit about the new Battle Royale mode that's coming to Battlefield without showing us much of that yet. I expect we'll probably get more news on that like around like November, December time as they get closer to completing what that looks like for Battlefield 6. But that concludes all the major things that are happening to Battlefield 6 on day one. And it is looking like it's going to be a much different feel to the game. It's going to be a lot tighter, a lot nicer, a lot neater, but also at the same time get a lot of balance that was needed. Battlefield 6's open beta was a great time. I was personally playing a lot of the closed playlists. My friends and I played open. We're like, oh, this is fine. Then we just jump back into closed because I think we're just kind of like old hat Battlefield veterans that we liked that play style. Maybe with open, we'll play with it a little bit more and experiment, because they were also saying like with the archetype conversation, since there was no dominant archetype, what they were saying basically with that is the subtext to it is people weren't always choosing signature weapons. They were breaking away from the signature weapons, which shows me that, hey, maybe I'm playing Assault and I just feel more at home in carbines, even though Assault's signature weapon is an assault rifle, thus giving them benefits to using assault rifle. Or same thing with an engineer. Maybe as an engineer, I was just enjoying the kit of an engineer, but I wanted LMG. That's support. Whoops. Yeah. I want to use LMGs or I want to use assault rifles, which again breaks away from their signature weapons. So it'll be very interesting to see what the balance feels like using open playlists on a wider spectrum with a lot of weapons to take advantage of. So go ahead and let me know in the comment section below. Do you like the open playlists? Did you play the closed playlists? Do you feel like a lot of the stuff that's coming to the game is the step forward from the open beta that you needed? Or is it really kind of stuff that was kind of mute for you? Did you want a different stance come that first update from the game? all in all, I'm really excited for Friday. So go ahead and follow me on Twitch, where I will be streaming Battlefield 6 and plenty of other games in like this next like 2 fucking months. We got like a bunch of major launches, but you'll be on the lookout for those. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one and take care.